Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. I'm your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this is Black MINDZ News. Black MINDZ News is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, investigate, decode, unveil, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, soul, mind, and spirit, because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this land that you call the United States, we, the foundational blacks of America, the bloodline, historical people, lineage, biological ties, the descendant and children, we give honor to our ancestors. And you know what our motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Today's date is August the 8th, 2019. This is the second part of what you seen yesterday, what about in St. Louis. Again, this is a 5-year anniversary coming of Michael Brown's death, Michael Brown Jr., being August the 9th. Today's story is the follow-up of when the end of that, what you seen, those who clicked on and seen that video, seen that at the end there was a sister in there named Heather Taylor, and she said something that she believes that white supremacy is in the police department. So the individual who was having the interview was having a second part, and today I got that second part. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go ahead and show with that interview, and we're going to glean from the interview about certain aspects. So again, this is Black MINDZ News, and stay tuned for this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and again, welcome to Black MINDZ News. First and foremost, I want to say what's good to my family, which is I consider my subscribers. Old family and new family. What's good, everybody? Thank you for your participation, for clicking on and watching this video. And passerbys, if you should happen, your GPS on your search engine somehow took you to the most hidden, tucked away, hidden show in the black corner of the internet. A show that's been around for 7 years. Used to could get 275,000 views, 50,000 views, 30,000, 20,000. Now I can't get past 100. You tell me if I'm the most hated show in the corner of the internet. Welcome anyway. Go through the aisle. We always got a grand opening over here. Go down the aisle, see something you might like. If something should rub you and make you feel some kind of way, remember that the motto of the show is the truth don't need no partner. Now let's get into today's topic for Black MINDZ News Report. Now again, we're going back over to St. Louis. Again, yesterday, those who've seen yesterday's broadcast, say that we talked about, again, from the perspective of the police, again, being the 5-year anniversary for Prince Mike Brown, and a lot of, they say, implicit bias training had been implemented across the country. About 155 of the departments, but they said only about maybe 69% of them really implemented it. And in the end, they just basically said they didn't know if they could tell if there was any changes Now, from the police department situation, I guess, but from the citizenry, I guess we would have another debate on that, right? So, what happened was, again, let me go ahead and show you this interview that took place here with this sister here, and listen to what she says here, and let's go ahead and check this out, and I should be right back.
We're getting rare insight from police officers about the challenges of fighting racism inside a department. A growing number of police departments in America's largest cities told us they've added implicit bias training. But hundreds of officers in multiple states have recently been exposed for racist social media posts attacking minorities and promoting racial stereotypes. Jeff Begay spoke to one St. Louis police sergeant whose department has officers at the center of that controversy. He continues our investigation into policing in America 5 years after Ferguson. Jeff, what did that officer tell you?
The St. Louis Metro police officer that you're about to hear from says the culture among her department's top brass is allowing bad cops to slip through the cracks. When we asked if the department had training to address possible racial bias, the answer wasn't clear. Do you think that there are white supremacists on the police force?
Yes.
You didn't even pause.
Have you seen some of the Facebook posts of some of our suspended officers right now? Yes.
Heather Taylor is an almost 19-year veteran on the St. Louis Metro Police Force. She points to the recent report by the Plainview Project, which flagged thousands of racist and derogatory social media posts, including some from 22 current St. Louis Metro officers like this one that compared Black Lives Matter to the KKK. As president of the Ethical Society of Police, a predominantly black local union, Taylor's mission is to root out racial discrimination among police. Protests in Ferguson took place about 10 miles from St. Louis Metro PD headquarters and led to changes in training there. SLMPD told CBS News in a survey that implicit bias training has been mandatory for officers once a year since October of 2014. That's 2 months after Michael Brown's death. Implicit bias training, they've had that here.
Yes.
Has it worked?
I think that's pretty obvious that it hasn't.
If implicit bias training is mandatory, it doesn't seem to have left an impression on Heather Taylor. Have you been through it?
No, it was optional.
Okay.
Lieutenant Cheryl Orange, a patrol officer for the department, says she doesn't remember taking it either. Wasn't it mandatory?
Not that I recall, but it may have been.
We've been trying to get SLMPD's police chief to comment on our CBS News investigation that found a majority of departments nationwide are adding training to address possible racial bias. Over a period of months, there have been phone calls, emails, and each and every time the police department has declined our request for interviews.
There's a change.
So we went to the man who hired the police chief. Jimmy Edwards is the public safety director for the city of St. Louis. We had an officer tell us she knows that there are white supremacists on the police force.
I'm not surprised. My job is to root that person out.
Implicit bias training, is it mandatory for all officers?
Yes, it is. It is mandatory.
We've talked to officers who don't remember taking implicit bias classes.
You know, well, everybody in the city of St. Louis have taken implicit bias training.
And they can't remember it?
I don't know. That's a good question for them.
That's odd.
It is odd.
Still, Edwards says use of force incidents are down in St. Louis City, which he credits to new training. But he also concedes police have a long way to go before he can assure a black mother he met that changes have taken hold in the department.
She asked me, can you change our police department? Because every time my little black boy encounters a police, I think one or two things is going to happen. That my child will lose his liberty and go to prison, or that my child will die. We have challenges, but we're overcoming those challenges a bit at a time.
Taylor says that should include better screening of applicants and breaking down what some have called the blue wall of silence, a term for police cover-ups of internal wrongdoing. Your fellow officers, they might see your comments and be offended. How do you go back to work after making comments like that?
Because when you know you're doing right, you can hold your head up. I don't think that all of our department is bad, but instead of complaining about me, how about you do something to change the culture that you know exists?
It is still unknown whether any police training technique could impact trends in use of force. One reason is because there has never been a federal use of force database to study. But for the first time, the FBI is now creating one, and we're going to have an exclusive report on that tomorrow, including an interview with the man leading that effort.
Wow. Some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So difficult, it sounds like, to really make people change how they really feel. And I think that's the issue. You can mandate things all day long, but it's a cultural shift that has to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and that's true in police departments and in society overall, frankly. But we were surprised by how candid the officers that we spoke to were with us, even when the cameras were rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
And if part of the problem is actually just knowing that it still exists, then maybe that's at least the first step
Yeah,
right
but
now.
you have to realize you may have a problem with your bias training if people can't remember taking that course.
Well, and that's what also surprised us, the fact that, there was this big push to get implicit bias training, but the question is it working? Is it making a difference?
Maybe counseling would help.
Jeff, thank you very much. And to see how police departments in your state responded to questions about training, including that racial bias training and de-escalation training, go to cbsthismorning.com. We have a state-by-state breakdown of the 155 police departments we surveyed.
You can watch more of Jeff's exclusive report tonight on the CBS Evening News and tomorrow on CBS This Morning. Jeff brings us an exclusive look at the FBI's new effort to track use of force across the nation for the first time. Plus, Jeff discusses what went into CTM's year-long investigation on today's CBS This Morning podcast. It's available wherever you like to get your podcasts.
All right. So you just seen there, right? So again, you see that there was a St. Louis sergeant that is quoted saying that there are white supremacists on the police force. I'm going to say that again, that a St. Louis sergeant was quoted, as you heard, there are white supremacists on the police force, right? And so, again, the sister name is Heather Taylor. She's a 19-year veteran for the St. Louis Metro Police Department. And primarily her job there also is that she is the president of the Ethical Society of Police, based on this predominantly a black local union. And its purpose is to root out racial discrimination among police. Now, based on what she does as a profession, she's kind of like your HR, right? She's your human resource. When you have problems within the system of where you work, you go to human resource to try to resolve, especially when it's amongst, your comrades or fellow employees, or sometimes it could be, supervisors and higher up. So when you have a gripe, you go with your grievance. So if that didn't exist, there wouldn't be a department for it, correct? And so that's what she does. So based on what she does for a profession, she has a direct understanding and seen many situations of the internal racial elements that happen within the department. And again, as I did originally, talked about how the number of police departments in the United States had implemented since 2014 of October, that they try to mandate that they all have a 1-year training session for racial bias, right? And when you look at some like the major cities, like New York has about 8 million in its population. You got Los Angeles have about 3.8 million. Chicago have about 2.7 million. Houston got about 2 million. Philadelphia got 1.5, and Arizona has about 1.4. And if you look at the population of blacks, matter of fact, you can even say in San Antonio got about 1.3 million, and San Diego got about 1.3. So if you take the population of blacks in those major cities, the 8 that I just talked about. And again, there's 10 more, but there's 50 more, but those being the heavily populated ones. What is the population of blacks in those cities, and the complaints that citizenry have against unrighteous arrests and, again, malfeasance and policing powers. And so you see that this sister got on camera and she said the things that she said. Now, she said the culture of the department, those who are in the top brass, she says, according to what she's saying, is that they allow for bad policing or bad police officers to slip through the cracks and stay amongst the rank, right? Or what you would say, the good cops. And again, based on the profession she does and people having those procedures and going through the protocols, trying to resolve issues, she sees all the outcomes, right? So she understands the percentages of whether people are being reprimanded, slap on the wrist, can escalate in other ways that even though it becomes unfounded, that it becomes a problem amongst those, again, who may be of BADOS, ADOS, or just black in general, that may be police officers. And so, her being the president, she gets the oversight, right? That's her department, everything up under her. So she has a real good understanding about this. So again, you can't throw this to caution to the wind and try to act as if this sister here, Heather Taylor, with 19 years as a police officer in this position, doesn't know what she's talking about, right? And so we remember after what happened with Michael Brown, that they came in with a DOJ, Department of Justice came in, and they did matter of fact, they went to, I think, St. Louis, Chicago, and a lot of the major cities, right, to investigate, was there some kind of discrimination element within the police departments. And what they determined is the reason why, you end up getting this implicit bias training. And, when they asked the question, based on after this, again, because what they end up doing, making a mandatory once a year. So think about that. Since 2014 till 2019, there's only been 5. Think about that. There's only been 5. How could there be changes 5 times? So you got 2014 of October, I'm pretty sure, being mandatory, everybody had to at least show up, right? So that being the first one, right? So when 2015 came, right, the following year, was it as, heavily populated in the training? So again, let's say 14 being the first, 15 being the second, right? So we're going to say 5 times you done went down to the principal office, right? Yeah, let's take it. We're going to take it to some school shit, right? So you went down to the office 5 times. Now, there's some people who can go down to the office 1 time, because a lot of times they end up doing it, calling your parents, and your parents got to come in now. You're dealing with that situation. So, again, depending on your rapport, your kind of relationship with your parents, I ain't trying to go through all this, right? So I'm going to straighten up, right? Get straight. But then you have some that, again, they can go 2 times. They like the attention, right? Maybe it's leniency at home. Maybe they so abused that the corporal punishment that they may be, receiving at home has become numb. That, it's kind of laughable. So they continue habitual, repeat offenders, right? And so they can go 2, 3, 4, 5, and guess what end up happening? Nothing happens, right? They don't change. They actually become more hardened, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, with 5 only being implemented through 2014 to 2019, again, you heard the sister in the end of the broadcast say, it's hard for somebody to change who they are. But I've been saying that, right? Those who've been watching over here, Black Minds Now, say again, if I am who I am before I became a police officer, let's say that you come in at least, you used to come, I think 18 would be the youngest, okay? Depending if you can pass the test and so forth. So 18 to 21. So prior to me coming in as a, from a civilian and becoming a police officer, I'm already been fixated by my environment, my parenting, my perception about, again, let's say it could be racial. If I'm white, I have a certain ideology. If I'm black, I have a certain ideology, right? And it could be skewed, or it can be correct, or it can be you trying to be politically correct, or you could be a kiss up. It could be all the above, right? And so now that I am this mellow cocktail of things, and then now I come into a profession that has to actually deal with the public. Now, based on me as an individual, maybe I'm not good with people, but I got this job, right? Maybe I got biases. Maybe, I was seeing Toni Morris. They were talking about some things that I hadn't even done her story yet. But Toni Morris was telling about how her father, when she was growing up, and how her father felt superior to white folks. He came up out of that particular time. The harshness that they were going through, that he built the tough skin and felt like I ain't inferior. Matter of fact, I ain't found a white person who better than me. And so he had a strenuous way of how he reared his children and how his perception about what he believed, he instilled in them. And he didn't allow certain things for that to infiltrate them, to make them feel like they were lower. Now, let's just say here it is that, let's say that Toni Morrison being a female, sometimes a little bit different. Not saying that it's unholy, but I'm just saying, again, let's say if it's a son may be a little bit more abrasive and, tough about how his perspective is. So now he done, been reared with that. He's going to do what? Transfer that to his child. And so forth. So let's say, for the sake of hypothetical speaking, that you as this individual have biases and racism about yourself. And now I get this profession, and this job is a community service position, right? I'm a civil servant. And I have to interact with people basically all the time. So if I see people that I have bias with, and those things that I have more of my life about than me being some training, what you think is going to be who I am when you're dealing with me? You get what I'm saying? And so we have to be honest that when people are coming in with all these, people want to say unconscious bias, it's just really who they are, right? Again, a lot of people try to, wear the uniform, have all the glitz and gold and the gun. That is the armor that they wear. But behind the armor, or the costume that, like children wear on Halloween, those who celebrate that, they get inside the costume and the costume becomes alive. And again, what you see is with its animation and stuff. That's the individual. But who is behind the costume is cloaked under that. And so what I always say is that some people, again, can have bad intent, and they can use that as their stealthness of how they move, right? And so this is what this sister is saying, that Heather Taylor is saying, that individuals who are having to come to what I'm telling you, as Toni Morrison as my example, her father and how he reared, and not saying where he was racist now, but I just turned it so it could be the way, so that now we could see that somebody who comes in like that and then get in the profession is already harboring certain kinds of feelings and spirit, that just because they put on a uniform doesn't change their position. And so when they encounter you with their bias and hate, then now you become a victim just for the simple fact that this is the ideology of the individual that is accosting you. And so based on the history that we have in this country, a lot of people don't want to be honest that the history in itself, the foundation and the making of this land and what it was founded on and what it has been and how long it's been going on, that somehow just because we're in the modern period of right now, this second and minute as we're breathing and living, that those things have been eradicated when no one has done what we're trying to do in this day and age, is bring light to show the reflection so that one may see himself or herself and do some inter-reflection as to what I need to do. Unless what you show me, they say, what they show you, you better, we'll say, if somebody tell you something, you better believe what they tell you. So if somebody show you something, you better believe they showing you who they really is. Training is just the professional part. That is that's the policy and way we have to implement again to make it again. If we're going to say that we're going to say EEOC and discrimination laws, we have to say this. But as you heard her say, that they allow certain people to slip through the crack. Now again, some people can a leopard change its spots? Can a zebra change its stripes? Most people will say, no, that's fixated. That's permanent. That's going to always be and never will be. But people want to believe in the better because, again, there's an ideology that's been ingrained and taught to most of us, and we want to believe that people can change. We all say, well, where I was at one time to where I am today, I have changed. But when we see this reheating of history that is familiar in our caustic DNA, some of us have not known what we see today in the energy and, let's say, the atmosphere that is being displayed. It might be new. For some, it might be the same old suit, just reheated. And it's rearing its head to the fact that now we're seeing people dying in groups at one time. So then we have to say, is this just an individual? Is this a group? Or is this the foundation rearing its head to establish itself once again? And so if it is, then the institution that it is in, this is how it's able to do what it's doing. And as I said, as the costume, you want to get to try to observe it through the costume and not for what it is behind the costume. And so you see that this sister, again, that she deals with in her police department, that she deals with this kind of stuff. What this is with the internal. So if you're having problems in the internal aspect of the department, what happens on the external when you can't get this kind of, you know what I'm saying? You got to go through the process, which is somebody getting locked up. If they don't get killed, get locked up, go through the judicial system, find out whether either you be guilty, convicted, or exonerated, and then still come back and still got to fight. So it's a longer process to try to get to that. Well, where it's internal is direct because you know exactly who it is, what they is, and the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So in this case, she can go get the files of individuals, how many complaints and so forth. So again, you can take what she's saying or you can leave it alone. And so again, can somebody who's been asphyxiated prior to them becoming the profession they is, and then implement some kind of training that's supposed to help them to deal with some of the unconscious biases they say? When they asked her the question, she said emphatically, no, this ain't working, right? This ain't working. And that basically, even though that the policy may state that all of us may hear that, you know, it says 2014, October, we implemented that every year that every department has to implement implicit racial bias training. But then when you get to ask people individually about, you know, did you go to the last one or so forth? A lot of them is like, the person who we're talking to said it was optional. I had a choice whether I wanted to do it or not. Now, again, if I'm guilty about certain things that you're accusing me of, and you give me an option not to have to deal with it, most likely most people are going to take the option not have to deal with it. But if you're going to make me have to deal with it, then I have to deal with it. But if you're going to give me the option not to, then we can understand why you say that it don't work, because it shouldn't be no option. If it's mandatory, it's mandatory. It's not optional. I pick and choose doing which one I want. No, you have to do it because, again, if you are people who supposed to be dealing with law and structure, then what's good for the goose got to be good for the gander. And so they even asked another individual outside of Miss Taylor. They asked that sister that was Cheryl Orange. She said, I don't even remember. You know what I'm saying? I heard something about it, but actually physically going and hearing the scene, no, I don't remember none of that. So, you understand? That's kind of funny, right? That they would say something like that. And so, with that being said, so then you can understand why what happened in Philadelphia when the peer review went and did its search and found that went on social media and they found out that there was a lot of foul behavior, things that didn't represent supposedly what the badge stands for, right? And so I seen when they showed this, I was kind of like, okay, let's look at this, right? So you see on the screen it says, it says, if the KKK is a hate group, isn't it about time we start being honest in America and admit that Black Lives Matter? Again, let me say this first before we do that. Because listen, again, remember that the sister said culture, right? Now, she used the word culture. You know, Mr. Blowman, I got to always go here, right? So when you say culture, you're talking about the cultivation, the refinement, the polish, the edification, the enlightenment, the sophistication, the urbanity, the worldliness, the elevation, development, the advancement, the progress, the attainment, accomplishment, learning, the erudition, knowledge, education, manner, breeding, good breeding, gentility, civility, elegance, grace, courtliness, savior, taste, good taste, discernment, discrimination. 2, a civilian way of life, custom, folks' ways, habit, lifestyle. Okay? So we're probably talking about 2, right? Culture 2, right? So when we're talking about culture with the police department, we're talking about the way of life of police officers in there, the customs that they have, the habits, the lifestyle, right? The moves, right? So if the sister says in the interview, as you heard her say, Heather Taylor says, well, did you see that what they found on social media? So when he asked her, do you believe that they're white supremacists? She said, well, isn't it obvious and ironic? I mean, not ironic, but isn't it obvious that based on what you see on the social media? So when we take this, as you see on your screen, if the KKK is a hate group, isn't it about time we start being honest in America and admit that Black Lives Matter is now? Again, how do you make the correlation? Again, make this square peg in the round hole make me understand. I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I think I'm a little sharper than a butter knife. You understand? So how is it that an organization that had been established that went around that burned, killed, hanged, maimed, you know what I'm saying? And ideology of its organization is the supremacy of the particular race. Now, when you compare that to Black Lives Matter, what has Black Lives Matter? And again, I understand. Let's say some people say, "Well, again, you know that this the founded and who was the economics." I get all that, but we're going to talk about the naivete of the people who are part of the organization who go out under the merit of trying to find truth, and the cause that they stand on is right. Now, again, how do you say that this organization goes out bombing, hanging, killing, right? When they, again, as you might be the profession of what may be the poster that what they go against, But you have to come to be honest with yourself. That is there, again, as we seen again, those who seen the show the other day, when the police officer said, when the brother Robert Johnson was being, just really beat down. Remember I said black police showing out for the white cop, right? And so that's what you end up seeing, was that being had. So Robert Johnson just got beat down and he said, no, they handle it. They train us to handle it. Now, again, what part in your mind, psychology, that don't rationale that there's something wrong with that? Handle it with that. Okay, so if you had a child in school and your child was unruly and the teacher just went and just hauled off because the teacher might say, I need you to sit down in your seat. Maybe the child said, I got to go to the washroom, right? Let's just say the child, I got to go to the washroom. But the teacher is being persistent that, no, you go sit down. But the child like, I can't hold it no more. So in this kind of resilient and kind of protesting, I'm going to stand because I got to go. And the teacher is like, no, you going to sit down. Now, because the child is resisting and just standing, but not, maybe not saying anything, just stand like, maybe trying to hold it, maybe trying to hold it. And then here's the teacher that's hauled off, molly-whopping your child, right? Now, you as now being the police that has to come and see the situation, she tell you, they trained us just to handle it. That would be acceptable to you? Most likely not, right? And so I don't understand the rationale. There's somebody who should be coming by and hear me, show me the rationale. Then when you try to make the comparison of the Ku Klux Klan organization that done had 3 different organizations over this period of time where they say they went out of existence. But again, we're starting to see again, the revealing is showing where it went, right? And so tell me how this comparison is equivalent. Show me. Don't give me, and again, this organization just as of 2014. Think about it. As of 2000, what is it? Is it 2014 or it was from Eric Garner? We're going to say from 2014 when we're going back to Michael Brown Jr., right? So that was the beginning of it. Now, look at the organization of the Ku Klux Klan and look at Black Lives Matter. And you want to look at the history of this versus this. And you want to say, so again, the psychology is what I'm saying. A lot of these people who in here, their mind's not right. Nobody wants to admit this. If you can sit there and say, and somehow, again, when we talk about humanity, then we must say that somebody else lacks thereof of humanity. They got to. There's no way you can rationalize and tell me that you can make this a comparison and really think that you're saying this with a sane mind. You should be like, I ain't even gonna try to make that comparison because there ain't no comparison. But again, it seems to me that you're trying to justify one, trying to use this to bridge to make it see they're doing it. So we are like, no. But see, that's the whole problem here, see? And so nobody wants to be called out for it. So again, you want to make a comparison to say, look, see, they're doing it. So if they can do it, we can do it too. But you've been doing it. These are in response to what's being done. They're not set up as organizations to go and target. They're going in response to it. So again, if somebody of whiteness comes over and see this video and you want to justify what they said, please comment. Matter of fact, we could do an interview and we could present it to the audience. If that's what you want to have this conversation, I'm willing to have it. So if anybody wants to, let me know and we could set that up. Now, moving on. So, you see that they went and they got that brother, right? Now, again, see that's the game that they play, right? They got to have that because, again, it makes them look like, how could it be racist? How could we be, how can you say we're racist when we have, look at the guy that's there, right? That's Jimmy, what's his name? I think his name is Jimmy Edwards, right? He's the St. Louis Public Safety Director, right? He's the one that is the one that do the hiring of police officers, right? So again, look how strategically, if you're going to put certain people in certain positions so that now when this stuff starts to come down, what end up happening? Well, how could you say that? Look, he's black. Jimmy, look at Jimmy. Jimmy's black. What are you saying with racist? You mean to tell me Jimmy wouldn't be able to discern whether these guys are racist? He's black. Yeah, but Jimmy getting the paycheck. Jimmy gonna say what it takes to do. And Jimmy understands by being in the position he understands that, again, there could be some detriment to him if he don't go along the way the program is, right? He knows that. And so when the interviewer says, that Miss Taylor was like, she believed that there's a white supremacist in the department. And he will say he's not surprised that that there are white supremacists on the force. He's not surprised by her comment, or he's not surprised at the fact that what she said is fact. You understand? If I'd have been there, I would have had to be. Well, hold on, wait a minute. Oh, you're not surprised? Are you mean not surprised that she would say that because again her profession is kind of like the human resource? She's going to see all that. So, of course, she's going to say that because, again, that's what her job is to handle those situations when black officers come in having problems with white officers or any other outside of them, and they come there as a union to try to resolve the issue. So he's maybe saying, well, I'm not surprised that she would say it because, again, that's what she does. Or is he not surprised at the fact that what she said and then that he believed that's also fact or true was not really disclosed, was it? And so, he says that his job is to weed them or root them out. He's the hire and the fire guy. But again, if people come in on nepotism, right? You come in because my granddaddy was a cop. His son going to be a cop. Now the grandson. So again, you coming in, it's kind of like going to college, right? You can come in and be on legacy, right? You got people who've been there, so that gives you some kind of priority over other people who have not, and right? So how do you, if this one is a bad or just see the bad, how do you get rid of them when they, they got family members and relatives, and you ain't gonna weed nobody out just because you sitting in that seat in that position. You're just a token. You're just You're just a figurehead. You make it look in the EEOC is working. But again, what is the real power? Again, one time I did the show. Remember when the sister that was talking about immigration and talking about that department and the head that was in there that they was having a hearing on said that based on his neglect by him being the head and running it, and the children and the immigrants were dying under his watch, that he's killing them. But they didn't like the fact that she used the word killing and wanted it to be stricken from the record. Now, the brother that was the head of the hearing was black. He was the one that proceeded. He was the one that ruled whether yay or nay, favor or not. He was in favor with the sister said. He said what she said did not violate anything and is not to be stricken from the record. Well, again, they got the backdoor policy. The backdoor policy is, well, your rules is not going to stand. Okay, we're not going to have that. So what we're going to do is we got the back door, break the glass case of the mercy. If we just happen to have an HNIC in charge and you doing something again that's not according to the way we want it, we have another way to do it. So we're going to vote to whether we're going to adhere to what you just. And so when they did the vote, they went against him, and then he had to go back. Okay, there will be restriction off the record. Yeah. So what would think that this brother here, this Jimmy Edwards, in that position could really, as he gave you the story that a black woman came to him and was concerned about her child and feeling that maybe, can you change the department? Now, see, again, sometimes our people are naive because we want right. We feel righteousness about things, and we want righteousness when you are a people who've been through what we've been through. And so when we see somebody in a position that the way that our general understanding of it is, the way that of a right mind would think that you could But that's not the way the game goes. So the sister was speaking from a heartfelt position, concerned about her child, thinking that maybe you could be in position, because again, I fear that, one of these police officers will coast my child. He could lose his liberty, meaning that his freedom, he's incarcerated, maybe something he didn't do, or even worse than that, he could meet his demise. And I'm trying to put some kind of faith in what you're going to tell me so that I can give me some relief at night, that when my son is out here, that I know that there's somebody in the position that's actually out here doing something to make some change. So he said, try to reassure her, but then he goes on and says that all they doing in there, is bits and pieces of time that they're trying. Wait a minute, people are being, wrongfully incarcerated. Now again, we're not going to say all of it. We just, again, one is too many, right? This thing's that way. There's times that it could be mistaken, but again, look at the process of how you go through to get somebody incarcerated. There's a process. So again, if all the I's and T's and dots are put in its proper place, then you shouldn't have a double-digit percentage of people that end up coming to find out that say, well, they didn't do it. You know what I'm saying? Or they wrongfully. That shouldn't be. That should be very small number. That sometimes it happens. But, when we stack up one side versus the other, then that's why it's a concern for the citizenry. That's why they feel the way. And then those that are in the blue, they think that, it's only targeting white folks. And again, you become the poster child, because every time this scene keeps get replayed, it's that you got your face on it, right? And so really, when you look at this, right, it's just, that's what it is. Again, the show that I did the other day gave you the history of the patty roll, the implementation of how you end up getting your police department, right? And so people want to believe in the better, but again, what you see, again, it say with your eyes not lying to you. Versus what you want to tell me, and then what I see is different, kind of like Rodney King getting beat, and then you're going to tell me what you've seen is not what took place. Let me tell you what took place, right? So, again, that's what it is. And again, this is just a report that came out. She believed, as many people believe, that there may be some infiltration that doesn't happen, and this is the new, as they say, that they went out of existence. Maybe they just, like a chameleon, it changed its colors and it moved its position, right? And so you take this again, this is about confronting racial bias. But can you really confront it as a program, or this have to be self-reflecting, or some individual that has to want to change for itself? But based on, look like, again, as I said, the culture, this is the way that some people look like this is the only way they can remedy for whatever it is agenda that they got. And this is a tool they may use as a facet to implement it. So again, it is what it is. So, for those, again, who are over here, I want to thank you for your listening of this program, or this, we're going to say this report, right? We're going to say a program. We're going to say this report, right? And as a listener, what we ask you to do for your patronage is, again, see this here, then I'll come right back. right, so once again, I want to thank everybody who participated in this show, clicking on. Again, you know, we all in this together. We got to find some way to unify. We got to end up and realize that, you know, sometimes some people, again, they stuck in the way that they were and are. And some things just ain't going to never change no matter what you try to do. Some people are just fixated like that. And so with that being said, again, you know, from a politically correct way, to implement some training sounds good. But when you don't see no results from it, then it means it's just really like paper tigers, just good on the paper, right? Don't really have no real power to structure really to change anybody because they're not really forced. The only way I think that there could ever be any real change is if people become fully accountable for their actions. Again, this is Black Minds News, and we want to thank you. And as we get up out of here, right? Let's see. I don't know if maybe I don't got no sound on that, right? That's what I got. I ain't got no sound on that. So I'll do that again, right? So as we get up out of here, again, I want to say to each one of them, love, prosperity, longevity, and love, peace, hair, and all grease, and all that good stuff. Until the next show, y'all. This has been another Black Minds News Report.